Hello, today is MΑΓHA PØJÀ, which is the first of the 4 main Buddhist festivals during the year. The next will be Wesak, the full moon of May. But today, another 15 days has gone by. It is the full moon of March, another Uposatha, or one Phra, or Buddhist holy day. As you know from my previous talks on these days, it occurs on the new moon and full moon of each month, which is approximately every 15 days. When I was living outside of the monastery in India, I would get on the bus the night before, travel all night to Bangalore to be with my fellow bhikkhus, monks in the main monastery there for the recitation of the MΑΓHA, the Buddhist rules for monastics. Every 15 days. This is essential for bhikkhus if they are able to. If not, we have other rules in place as to how we spend this day, but primarily it is in reflection of sila. Sila being the first part of our practice, keeping moral virtue, which if you are a lay person is 5 precepts. If you're staying as a lay person in a monastery, it is 8. If you're living in a monastery, usually as a lay person, it would be 10. And then as you become ordained into monastic life and eventually become a bhikkhu, a fully ordained Buddhist monk, you take on the full 227 rules. And it is this that is recited. But why is MAGHA PØJÀ a day of celebration? Okay, well, it commemorates the day in the Buddha's life, I think about 10 months after his enlightenment. So if you count from May to the following March, I think that is 10 months, 10 lunar months. He was enlightened in Bodh Gaya, near Varanasi, in India, and that's North India, now the state is Bihar. He was enlightened there on this day, the full moon in May, and then some 10 months later, having in that interim period travelled to Sarnath, which isn't, Bodh Gaya is quite a long way from Varanasi. Sarnath is near Varanasi. He travelled to there, where he taught his first 5 ascetics that had accompanied him on his initial practice and training. And he'd left them and he returned to teach them the 4 Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. That Noble Eightfold Path being principally Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Then after some time, there's a lot of miles or kilometers in between, and I have been to all of these places, so I know how long it takes even on the train and on buses. And he was doing all of this travelling around walking, of course, because part of our rules is we're not allowed to ride or take our own charge of a horse and cart or ox and cart. We can accept lifts, always assuming the circumstances are right, in that the person offering us the lift is not an unaccompanied female, for example. However, back to the story of MAGHA PØJÀ. He ended up in Rajagaha, it was called. It's called Rajgir in modern times now, which is near, again, not far from Varanasi. No, near, not far, from Bodh Gaya. Sorry, I keep getting these two places mixed up. I think it takes in the car about, or on a taxi. I went by taxi, I think, on that occasion. From Bodh Gaya, I went to Rajagir, and I also went to Nalanda. And Rajagir is about, I would imagine, about 20 kilometers, even 30. Takes about half an hour, I suppose, in the car. So it would have taken, a good part of a day to walk there. Many of the suttas begin with, whilst in such and such a grove, which is near Vulture's Peak. It is very near to there. He called, actually he didn't call. Simultaneously, on this occasion, being the full moon of the third lunar month, March, 1,250 of his disciples, this number had become that from the original 5 in that short time, simultaneously assembled in this place. They were all arahants already by now, because they had been directly ordained by the Buddha himself in a very simple ordination procedure called Erhi Bhikkhu, which is come here and go forth. Basically, he'd say, come here, Bhikkhu, announcing you are now a Bhikkhu. You just went with your bowl and your robes, and these were your requisites, and he ordained you as a fully ordained Bhikkhu. But of course, this was the Buddha himself, and these people were listening to his words directly and living with him, and therefore became arahants very quickly. And one can assume, presumably as a result of the very good parami, perfections that is, in their previous lives, they had built up to be born not only in a time like us, where the Buddha's teachings are available, and that is auspicious enough, but to be actually born whilst the Buddha is around, to teach them directly and ordain them directly. Now that is perhaps a result of the best karma you can have. So they were arahants already on this occasion, and they were called together on this occasion, and he recited the Ovada Patimokkha. The Ovada Patimokkha is the pre-rana, came before this Patimokkha, the recitation of the 227 rules of bhikkhus. This came before that, whilst he was still alive, because those rules were developed over the time of his teachings, which went on for 45 years afterwards. So they were developed as a result of encountering little issues and problems with the monastics, the monks, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis of the time. If a occurrence came about which caused a problem, they'd meet, discuss it, and make a little rule to make sure that they knew how to deal with it in the future, or to prevent it happening again. And this is how those rules came about. But subsequently, after his parinibbana, his death, once they were set down, they have never been changed. It is the only set of rules and regulations of any organisation in history that has not been changed. For most organisations change their rules at every regular meeting, if not yearly, if not every few years at the very least. This organisation, this uniform, hasn't changed its rules, or this uniform, or the way we even clean it and wear it, in 1,200 and this year 66 years. So he really got the rules right, but they weren't 227 rules in the first place. However, like the 5 precepts and the 8 precepts 10, 75 training rules of a samanera, and then the 227 rules, they all revolve around the same ideal, the same idea, the same notion of harmlessness, doing no harm and developing the mind. Because the only way we can develop the mind is keeping sila, moral virtue, and doing no harm. So initially, the Patimokkha, as he recited it, was this, and I'll have to read this because let me just check I've covered how they came about. Yes, they're the 4 reasons that this day MΑΓHA PޫJÀ came about, that there were 1,250 disciples, they were arahants, they were ordained directly by the Buddha, and it was the full moon of the 3rd lunar month, being March usually. So the Ovada Patimokkha, on this 4-fold assembly it's called, those 4 reasons, and this day is also called Sangha Day, because it is representative of this occasion of the monastic Sangha, which is what we call the Sangha, the monastic form, group, organization of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. And I will read to you how the Ovada Patimokkha was given and subsequently then repeated on every full moon to his direct disciples. And then I'll explain to you how it works in relation to our lives now, in modern day practice. I've got to put that down there, otherwise I can't see it very well. Okay, the first of these 3 principles is the non-doing of evil, the full performance of what is wholesome, the total purification of the mind. And then it is followed by the formulation of the Buddhist ideals. Okay, so this is the second of those 3 principles. Patience and forbearance are the highest austerity. The awakened ones say Nibbana is the highest. One is certainly not a wanderer if one injures others. One is not an ascetic if one harms another. When they refer to wanderer and ascetic, generally they're referring to the idea of a samana. A samana being a religious person whom traditionally in the Indian culture wandered and often practice ascetic practices of austerity. So today we have in modern India still sadhus, many of them, and very occasionally, like myself, a wandering Buddhist monk wandering around India trying to get fed and trying to find accommodation or somewhere suitable to spend my time. But now, as of 2 months ago, I have come to Thailand, where that is so very much more easy. Not only because there are many monasteries, but it is a Buddhist country where they understand exactly what you are, and you are of their religion that they practice and understand and have grown up with. Everybody in Thailand has known monks all of their life, from growing up to adulthood. So there's no explanation necessary. It's a simpler life in terms of that side of things here. Anyway, sorry, let me continue. The third of these principles, which is really about the path of the practice. Not abusing, not injuring, and restraint under the rules of discipline, which I've mentioned, and knowing moderation in eating and secluded lodgings, and exertion in respect of higher thought. This is the teaching of the awakened ones. Okay, so those 3 principles really are not far different from the principles of sila, so keeping moral virtue, as is mentioned there in the third of these. You see it's kind of in reverse. Samadhi, which is referred to in the middle of these three, patience and forbearance, the awakened ones will experience nibbana. Okay, that's the middle. And development of the mind, development of the wholesome mind states and reduction in unwholesome mind states, which I mentioned so often, mentioned here about not doing of evil and full performance of what is wholesome. So taking it from the mind into the actions of body, speech and mind. Wholesome, developing. Unwholesome, reducing. Actions of body, speech and mind. In other words, developing wisdom. And then that also encompasses the understanding of the Buddha's teachings. So the teachings that the Buddha was reciting throughout his lifetime to his direct disciples were not so different to how we understand and practice Buddhism today, and are still as relevant today as they were then. Now the additional rules that every 15 days we recite in the monasteries are to keep the Sangha, and this is Sangha Day, so I will explain this, the Sangha in the same, to the same standard of behaviour of body, speech and mind, so all of our actions in how we speak, how we behave with our physical actions, including how we walk from A to B, how we travel, and our process of mental development in terms of our meditation practice, our study of the Buddha's teachings, our development of wisdom. And then therefore our ability in time as experienced bhikkhus to learn and understand the Buddha's teachings with enough proficiency to pass on the Dharma, explain the Dharma to lay people and junior monastics. I'll remind you, I am a junior monastic and I'm only sharing my point of view from my experience as a junior monastic. I don't consider myself a teacher, a person whom is experienced in Buddhism and the practice of meditation, and whom is an ordained bhikkhu, but now only for a few years. So it's early days, because established bhikkhu here in Thailand of 10 years and more is considered an ajahn, a teacher. And that is not unfair, because someone ordaining for a short time is not living the life you can learn a lot. I've learned a lot, and because I practiced keeping the 8 precepts for many years before ordination, to some extent I was living the life of a monk a long time before I was ordained. However, the actual process of ordination, being ordained, and this is the final renunciation, if you like, where if you are taking it in terms of ordination for life, as I did and many Western monks do, you really have made that final commitment. Now, the only proof of that final commitment is not the ordination, that's the easiest bit. Getting these robes, okay, putting them on is a bit tricky, but keeping them on, well, literally keeping them on is tricky too. I suppose you get used to that. But keeping them on from the point of view of remaining a bhikkhu for a long time, that is the hard bit. Yes, it's not ordination that's hard, that's the easy bit. It's staying ordained, because you are keeping 227 rules. So part of our rules is the day before this Suposita day, I have to shave my head, and here in Thailand, eyebrows. We wash these robes, we boil up I will try and make a video when I get an opportunity of that process, because it is so interesting, with all this jackfruit tree wood in a big pot, cauldron on a fire, an open fire. We boil up this solution, and the monks in order of seniority It's very easy here. There's only 3, sometimes 4. So I'm the last. Put our robes in this boiling solution, and then let them drip dry. No wringing, very gently let them drip dry. It dyes them, it cleans them, it preserves them with an antiseptic quality of some kind to keep them fresh and not getting smelly. And only really every 15 days we do this. Now, I mean, I've probably broken a rule, but I have had had occasion previously to wash mine in the interim period. If I've travelled or if I've spilt something on them, you don't want to just spot wash, because of the dyeing process you could leave a mark. So you get some food on there, you might want to wash them in some water. But we don't use detergents and things. If we use anything, we use these leaves, which are called something which I don't know, which are soapy, that we find here in the forest. And this is the kind of way that we wash our robes, as the disciples of the Buddha would have done back to 1266 years ago. So they've always been this colour. The prescribed colour of the Buddha said dung water. Now, dung water, if you can imagine cow's dung in water, would be precisely this not very nice colour, really. I love this colour. It grows on you, but it's probably not a colour which would be your favourite if you weren't a Buddhist monk or didn't know Buddhist monks. Dung water. Now, these colours vary in different countries because of the local materials they use for that dyeing and cleaning process, being anything from berries to different kinds of bark or spices, for instance. In India they certainly became very yellow. In Thailand there is a range of colours, from this colour to slightly darker, which is the real dark heartwood. This is almost the heartwood, and then the lighter outer wood. The city temples, because you have city monks and forest monks in Thailand. The city monks are usually more orange looking. And often when you're a samanera, when I was a novice monk, a samanera, who they have 75 training rules, I was a samanera for 1 year before I could become a bhikkhu. And you have those orangey robes, which is the outer wood of this particular tree. And then when you become a bhikkhu, you have new robes, which is generally this colour. It's not a hard and fast rule, that is a tradition, that is the way it's worked out. And the colours are not important, but they do give you some indication as to where a monk's from and what kind of monk within that area or country they are. So I suppose I've gone a bit off the track there, but it's always quite an interesting one. I've been asked many times now to show how to put this robe on. There's many videos on YouTube, you can see that, so I'm not going to do it. Because firstly, I'm not very good at it. And although I think, well, with time, practice makes perfect and it probably becomes easy, I've seen many videos of monks and they're still always going like this, like I am. And I kind of feel you shouldn't be having to go like that. But if you don't go like that, it does not stay on. You hold it on with this hand, and often you have to let go. But we have different ways of wearing them. This is the way we wear them here. And it's okay. It's traditional. It's a little bit more complicated when we go out on arms round, because we have to cover ourselves from neck down to ankles, down to wrists. So we have another rule in this Patimokkha. It's actually in the 75 training rules, so even the novice monks, samaneras, when you're out and about in public, you're fully covered. And it's called parimandala, meaning a all even circle. And that is basically referring to the hem of the robe around the bottom should be like this, a circle around your ankles. And then like a tube all the way up, so you're fully covered. Even our bowl is underneath, and we just get it out for receiving food. And it's actually a very nice, comfortable way to travel. It keeps you kind of cool, it keeps you warmer or protected from bugs or mosquitoes in the evening and night time. And you feel quite a bit different, let's say. So you feel you've got the protection of sila, you've got the protection of those rules. All of these rules that we recite time and time again, every 15 days, aren't there to keep us in check. Well, okay, they are a little, I suppose. But I don't think any monastics look at them like those kind of rules. Not like a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit on a motorway, and you've got a Porsche. That kind of rule might seem a little restrictive, although it is perhaps for your own good, but possibly not, because you've got a vehicle that could quite handle easily a higher speed and has the capability of stopping more quickly as long as the driver is proficient. So if you have a motor racing driver driving a Porsche or Ferrari on a very beautiful autobahn, no, I don't think they have those rules in Germany, but a motorway, a good motorway, and there's no traffic around, it might seem a restrictive rule to not be able to drive over 70 miles an hour, for instance. Those sort of rules may be a little feeling like rules. So we look at them as supportive structure to protect our sila, our moral virtue, and to protect us, both physically and spiritually. And when I say spiritually, protect our actions of body, speech, and mind. Because there is a rule to cover everything. For instance, how we walk around outside, how we wear our robes, how and when we clean our robes, and with what. When we shave our head, I think that's outside of the Patimokkha, but there are many thousands of rules outside of the 227 core rules that have been developed by monastic orders in different monasteries, sometimes called the core wat, which is the monastery rules, specific monastery rules, like bylaws, if you like, to again aid us in giving us guidance as in the way to behave correctly. So take a very real example. When I arrived here in Thailand, I knew nobody. Well, actually, yes, I knew some people in a guest house in this local town, and the neighbour, who is a lay Buddhist of that guest house, whom I've known from previous visits to the other monastery, which I wasn't going to directly. So I know the monks and some of the people there at that monastery. But I had no fixed plans as to how long I would be here or where I would be staying. I came to this monastery, a forest monastery, because if you can hear this noise in the background, I'm not sure what that man over there is doing, the monk. I think he likes to always do some chopping or sweeping or something going on. He's a new one. I'm not sure when he arrived, but he's a little different to some of them here, a bit noisier. Anyway, it doesn't interrupt me. And this is part of our development of that patience and forbearance, living with other people. As husbands and wives have to put up with different things, living with each other, and learn to be patient and considerate and compassionate in order for their relationship to work and survive, and so often it doesn't, through from some very little and trivial reasons. Us monastics have to put up with many husbands and wives, not so much the wives because the nuns or mechis here are quite away and separate from us, but the other monks, we're living with other different men all of the time. In Bangalore, in India, I was with nearly 100 monks. In fact, for the Vasa, the 3-month monsoon period, they used to try and keep a number of 108 monks, which was us 34 or so bhikkhus and 74 novices for the entire 3 months. 108 men living together, men and boys, ranging from 8 years old to about 70 something, all living together in not a very big place. Did we fall out? No. Did anyone punch anyone on the nose? No. Did anyone steal anything from another, or accidentally take something of someone else's, or accidentally offend someone. No. How? Why? Because of these rules we have. So they're not rules. They're our safety net. They're our protective measures. They're our instructions. So we enjoy understanding them, we enjoy keeping them, and it is a celebration each and every 15 days to be able to celebrate them. And what this celebration is today is the celebration of the origination of those rules, formulated from those principal ideals of mental development and the development of our actions of body, speech and mind, and the practice of meditation. This is what the Buddha laid down for us before his parinibbana, his death, in order that we could live to attain to enlightenment as he had shown us directly through his teachings and through these ovadas repeated every full moon and new moon, to live as he did. And the very best way to teach is by example. He could have gone and lived alone as an ascetic in a cave, or he could have gone and lived in opulence, but he chose to live the way he was showing people how to get to Nibbana. And this does not exclude, although it's Sangha Day, it does not exclude the lay people, because the lay people have this opportunity to be with the Sangha. We've had some lay people staying here at the monastery, a family. The mother and the little baby have been staying over, well, baby boy, toddler, in with the Mechi's little area. And the father and the two elder sons have been staying in one of the little guest houses we have here. And they've stayed for some few days, as is traditional here in Thailand. They meet up for the evening puja and at the sala for the offering of the food, and they do whatever lay people do for the rest of the time. We don't really mingle so much with them, but I should imagine, they might be meditating and just relaxing, but they have escaped from lay life for a few days. Even if they just sit and do nothing, or just talk to their children. They've no distractions of television, no distractions of socializing, going to restaurants. Their food, they're living on 8 precepts, so they probably don't eat in the afternoon or evening, or if they do, perhaps little. I'm not entirely sure how that is kept within this particular monastery. But it's a very nice, and I watched them and thought, I wish when I was a lay person with a family I'd have had that opportunity to go on such a holiday. Very different to a holiday. Here in Thailand, on this day, MΑΓHA PÖJÄ, every year, there is no sale of alcohol even. Throughout this entire kingdom, they cannot sell wine or beer or vodka in bars, in hotels, or I think in some specific international hotels there's a loophole maybe, but generally the people of Thailand don't expect to go and buy alcohol because their 5th precept is religiously strictly kept, of no intoxicants. And very many of them also take the 8 precepts on this day, even if they're not staying in the monastery. And some of them extend this is how much faith there is in this training, and faith there is confidence in the Buddha's teachings there is in a Buddhist country. So many of them for the entire week, or so many days leading up until MAGHA PÖJÄ, will keep and take these 8 precepts. So no entertainment, no watching television or listening to music, and no drinking, of course. So it is very supportive of their confidence in the practice. The reason being is because they experience a different way of life as if they are monks or nuns themselves, even for a short time. And that experience stays with you. It gives you a different perspective when you return to everyday life, when you return to your entertainment and your drinking or whatever, that there is an alternative. And actually, it wasn't half bad. In fact, it was very nice. And I saw as they were leaving a little earlier, because I think they were leaving after the mealtime, they looked smiling. They're always smiling here, people, but they had a different air about them of serenity and peace. And I should imagine even if you just did a few days once a year, that would be better than 3 weeks in the best holiday resort. Because the best holiday resort there is in this life is inside. The resort, the refuge of your heart, of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the triple gem. And this is how we develop our sila, our samadhi, our panya, and ultimately on this noble eightfold path attain to nibbana. So I wish you all a very happy Sangha Day, MΑΓHA PޫJÀ. Tonight in many temples and monasteries there will be the procession of lights with candles, and they'll walk around the temple circumambulating 3 times with some chanting under the full moon, a bright and beautiful night on a clear and lovely day here in Thailand. If you're here, have a wonderful MAGHA PޫJÀ. If you're in any other place, if you're able to watch this on YouTube, there are many other Buddhist channels which will be showing you their events at their temples and their monasteries. Please enjoy those and take the night off of the drinking and off of the other forms of entertainment, and just reflect on how peaceful and serene life can be when just one puts things down for a little while, lets go of what we think we need, the entertainment and the external stimulation, and realizes what we actually have. And that is this understanding, this wisdom within ourselves that is innermost but already there. It just has to be seen and experienced for yourself. And this is why we practice meditation. So enjoy your practice, enjoy the rest of your day and evening, whatever time it is there, or if it's tomorrow, it's not too late to look back at yesterday and experience it all over again. So thank you for watching, and I'll say goodbye.